4 of them at this point. And these are going to discuss some things that are out there. And forgive me, I'm going to have to be pretty general on some of these, as some of them have a variety of different options to them, but I'll keep them at the kind of the average or the middle of what these systems are. And one of the systems that a lot of people are familiar with, depending on who you read or who you get advice from, one of the most common systems we see used by individuals is something called the bucket system. And the basic concept of the bucket system is you have various buckets of money. Somebody's probably trademarked that at this point, but the idea is short-term money, things that you're gonna need to spend within the next 1 or 2 years, you really don't want to put at risk. That is not money you want to put into markets or investments that could go down, but rather these are the areas that you'd want to put in stable savings accounts or things that hold their value. And that's the 1 to 2 year kind of spending need. And then as you get beyond that 1 or 2 year spending need, you start to look to invest that money to grow it at a higher rate of return, stay ahead of inflation, things like that, and try to grow and compound that money while you're spending that 1 and 2 year bucket, if you will. And then if you have a lot of extra money, or if you have a legacy intent, whether you want to give money to your next generation or you're charitably inclined, you'd have another bucket where it's very long term and you can take, say, concentration risk, whether you own physical real estate that you never plan to sell, things like that. So the bucket system, the real good benefit about it, it's very easy to see, it's very easy to track, it's identifiable, it's something you can measure, which makes it very easy for individuals to use. The cons of the bucket system are, it's not a system you can just set up front and forget about it and come back to it in 10 years. As you spend down that first bucket, you constantly have to be replacing it and figuring out where you're going to pull money from to replace that short-term bucket that you are drawing down. And a lot of the time people forget to do that. They spend that bucket and then they're stuck in a market environment like we are now, and they're looking to sell down assets in order to replenish that bucket. So that's the bucket system. The other one that is very common and has been around for multiple decades are target risk portfolios. So I'm sure for all those who've joined today, you've heard of risk questionnaires and trying to figure out what your risk tolerance is. And it's been a common thing, common item used in financial services for a long time. Virtually every investment house has their own form of a risk questionnaire on their website now. But the idea there is you build a portfolio that you can tolerate the swings of it. So the ups and the downs, and that it fits your ability to stick with it over time. However, what we find with that, very easy to take a 10-minute risk questionnaire when times are good and come out showing that you're aggressively tilted, you can tolerate anything, only to find yourself really questioning your strategy in times of stress. And so risk tolerances can change over time, and they don't really address the need for the fund. So the challenge with target risk portfolios is when things are good, people like them, or they start increasing their risk as they get more bullish, and then they change them at the wrong time. The third one, which for many of you who participate in 401k plans through your employers, something that's been more prolific in the last decade are target date funds. And target date funds are the simple idea that rather than you picking and choosing from all the options and funds and areas you can invest your 401k in, you pick a single fund that does that for you. And under the hood, they build the portfolio, the provider builds the portfolio for you. And then as you get closer to your target retirement date that you set, it de-risks the portfolio. It takes risk out of the portfolio, so the portfolio becomes more conservative as you approach the retirement date you have set. Now, the challenge is not all target date funds are created equal. They all have different methodologies for how they de-risk and how long they de-risk over, meaning how fast they go more conservative for you. And so if, for example, let's say 2020 was your retirement year, you can look across a suite of different target date funds right now. and probably see a variety of different types of risk allocations, meaning some are very aggressive still, even though your target retirement date's 2020, and others may be very conservative. And the real challenge with target date funds, they're a great tool, especially for those who don't want to start picking and choosing funds within their 401k. The real challenge with them is they don't take into account any other assets you may have. And so while you may be retiring in 2020, you may not be touching that 401k money until 2030. And a lot of people forget that. And the target date fund has no way to know what the pool of participants in that fund have outside of it. So it's very much set up in a vacuum. Now, the fourth one is an area that I will walk you through today on our approach to this, which really borrows concepts and the best ideas from each of these three sort of areas in general. So we're going to jump down into how we frame this first into doing this correctly.